need food to survive, but the wrong foods can also kill.
95% of the folks that make our nutrition guidelines are directly paid for by food companies, and we've gotten people addicted.
I really do drink a gallon a day of Diet Coke.
So you think it's healthy?
Ultimately, yes.
Your ear just fell off. No, I'm just kidding.
Salt, sugar, and fat, these are science experiments. It's literally engineered to hijack our brain, to not satiate us, to make us want more. We have an addiction crisis in America when it comes to food, and that's very profitable. I was a consultant for Big Food. There was a very clear objective. They want to make cheap, addictive food. Almost every single chronic condition that is shortening and torturing American life is tied to food. This is obviously a disaster for American health, but for the food companies, it's very profitable. Ultra-processed food is now 70% of our diet. Like, the food is literally weaponized with sugar, seed oils, highly processed grains. It's happening in the food industry is not a free market, it's a rigged market. Working for the food industry, I helped pay off regulators, pay off the media itself to run stories about how ultra-processed food is healthy, paid off lawmakers, paid off researchers. Coca-Cola pays the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Diabetes Association, the American Cancer Society. We did that in spades, millions of dollars to groups that would do that for us. So we just went down the list of institutions Americans trust and tried to get them money. That was my job. Humans are born with an innate sense of what's good for us, and that is being taken away by the food industry.
Callie Means is co-founder of TrueMed and co-author of Good Energy, which unpacks the incentives of our broken food system and provides a path forward. Kelly, thank you for being here and talking about this.
Thank you.
You've been on the dark side. You say it's the devil's bargain. What do you mean?
There's a 3-step playbook. Working for the food companies, they hired all the scientists in the 1980s from the tobacco companies. The tobacco companies, as smoking went down, actually started buying Nabisco and Kraft and shifting their scientists over. The key thing that the food companies know is that ultra-processed food, which is now up to 70% of our diet, is a science experiment. They're hijacking our evolutionary biology, and they're making the food addictive. And working for the food companies, the first part of the devil bargain is making that food normalized. So we paid the USDA advisors. 95% of the folks that make our nutrition guidelines are directly paid for by food companies. That means the USDA recommends added sugar for 2-year-olds. They say up to 10% of a 2-year-old's diet should be added sugar. We pay the lawmakers themselves. We pay the regulatory agencies. Literally, the American Diabetes Association, which sets the standard of care for diabetes, accepts money from Coca-Cola. So we normalize this addiction crisis. When you do a brain scan of a person eating ultra-processed food, it fits all the criteria for addiction, and we've gotten people addicted.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You're saying that the major beverage companies, food companies, all of them, are bribing the scientists, bribing the regulatory agencies to endorse their formulas, their ingredients for food, to say that they're good, say that they're okay. And in fact, those ingredients are meant to addict people to the foods that they're selling.
It's the express purpose. I was shocked as a junior employee to see a list of names of professors from Harvard, from Tufts Nutrition School, from Stanford. And as a junior employee working for the food companies as a consultant, I steered money to those schools. The food industry funds nutrition research in this country 11 times more than the NIH. You are loath to find a nutrition researcher who's not directly paid with a direct consulting agreements, bribes, and their research is predominantly funded by the food industry. I can tell you from working for this industry that that's not out of a philanthropic goodwill for unbiased research. The food industry is spending hundreds of millions of dollars on nutrition research to enhance their bottom line. It's to normalize these addictive foods.
Okay, so you say added sugar for 2-year-olds. So these cereals that they might eat that have all the cartoons on the front of them and that sort of thing, you're talking about the same mantra for a drug dealer.
The biggest drug addiction crisis and drug issue in the country by far is the ultra-processed food industry. And you're hitting on the second aspect of this devil's bargain. Food and ultra-processed food is causing absolute devastation in America. 9 of the 10 leading causes of death are foodborne illnesses. If you take down ultra-processed food, you are eliminating diabetes, you're eliminating heart disease, you're putting a stab to the heart of cancer, many forms of cancer are metabolically related. Even Alzheimer's is now called type 3 diabetes. It's so closely related to our diet. Dr. Phil, the reason I'm speaking out is because a lot of us are parents, and I have a small child, and children are running into an absolute buzzsaw. We're so metabolically dysfunctional as adults that children are now developing prediabetes and metabolic dysfunction in utero. And kids now, 50% of teens are overweight or obese, 25% of teens have fatty liver disease. That's tied to the mental health epidemic where 40% of high school seniors have a mental health disorder. We're poisoning our kids, and it's the biggest issue in the country.
Okay, so you're talking about sugar, obviously. That's the white devil, right? All right, what else are you talking about?
I call it the unholy trinity of ingredients in ultra-processed food. You've got added sugar, you've got seed oils, you've got highly processed grains. All three ingredients are essentially invented just 100 years ago and were not evolutionarily made to handle.
At one time, they were proposing a tax on sugar, and you're saying they bribed organizations to fight against that and get it defeated.
Yeah, this is the third step. So we're getting really sick because of ultra-processed food, and then the food industry and the pharmaceutical industry, which profits from being sick, absolutely rigs the debate to make this normalized and obfuscate the problem and frankly blame the American people instead of the system itself. So we at Coke paid the NAACP, prominent civil rights groups, to say it was racist to take away food stamp funding from Coca-Cola. Today, the top item purchased on food stamps is sugary beverages.
So you're saying Coca-Cola went and paid the NAACP to call anybody racist that was resisting the sugar tax?
This was reported in the New York Times and throughout the media. The NAACP, after accepting millions of dollars from Coke when I was working for them in 2010, 2011, called anyone who questioned the idea of taking food stamp funding away from Coke racist, saying that lower income kids, really enjoyed their soda and it was a personal choice issue.
I've been training in the gym for a very long time, and Diet Coke is a huge part of my life. I consume, give or take, a gallon of Diet Coke a day. When I wake up, most people go for their morning coffee, but I literally run to my local self-serve fountain and just run for a diet soda. So when I was younger, I became very overweight because I drank regular Coke so much. Became addicting. I made the switch to Diet Coke and eventually started improving my other habits, and the synergy of those two things dramatically improved my health. The reality is there is virtually zero evidence that diet soda of any kind can cause harm to you, and the benefits on its usefulness outweigh by far any of the risks. Some of the benefits of Diet Coke and diet soda in general are just increased feelings of satiety. And the reality is the benefit in the feeling of fullness you get between meals and with meals by doing that dramatically outweighs the tiny little bit of artificial sweetener you might be consuming. Diet Coke is such a useful tool because it allows you to limit your cravings. The amount of times I've sat there and said, you know what, I'll have something sugary after I drink this Diet Coke. And I find that once I drink it, the urge to go gorge on candy or cookies or cake is completely gone. I will probably drink Diet Coke for the rest of my life.
Okay, how much are you drinking a day?
I really do drink a gallon a day of diet soda.
Really?
Yes. They know me as the Diet Coke guy in restaurants I go to, local restaurants, and they bring me two before I even sit down.
And you think this is good for you?
Actually, yes. I was formerly overweight. I was 5'5", 170 pounds when I was younger, and I was around 14, 15. And as I got older, I managed to lose around 35 pounds from improving my lifestyle habits. And one of the main ways I've done that is through limiting my cravings, my overeating. So I'm using diet soda as a tool to help me limit my alcohol consumption. Hardly ever go for cookies, candy, sweets, things like that. So it has completely altered my eating habits. And there is a lot of research. They have a study here where 18.65% more people in a group that substituted diet soda for water lost at least 5% of their body weight. So they were trying to make people lose weight, and they found that more people actually lost weight in the diet soda group than in the water group.
So you think it's healthy?
Ultimately, yes. In combination with water, yes.
Your ear just fell off. No, I'm just kidding. You don't think it has any side effects?
No, and there are some people who don't tolerate caffeine well. So if you don't tolerate caffeine well, by all means, don't drink it.
Yeah. So what do you think about him drinking a gallon of diet soda?
There's two high-level points, I think, that are really important about this for, I think, the audience to understand. Number one is I looked at that study, and on the study, it's funded by Coca-Cola. And I just cannot express this. I cannot express this enough. Nutrition research is propaganda and public relations for processed food. There is not a lobbying firm for broccoli. There's not a lobbying firm for water. Okay? The reason there's been 50,000 nutrition studies, which I helped rig, in the past 2 years produced is because they're documents to sell us poison. There's 2 other quick points I want to make. There's a ton of studies, nonpartisan, non-conflicted studies that say that sweetness, that aspartame in Diet Coke, it's not risk-free. It hijacks our insulin levels. It hijacks our glucose levels. That actually makes us, many studies show, more insulin resistant. What does that mean? That's our body's ability to produce energy. Actually, study after study show that people that drink diet soda actually want to eat more and do gain weight. So I think there's nothing risk-free, and we've been sold a bill of lies that these artificial sweeteners are not, without their problems.
Yeah, because we were looking at these studies that you gave us.
Yes.
And there's a long list of people that fund and support those studies. General Mills, Kellogg, PepsiCo, Quaker Oats, International Sweeteners Association, Nestle, General Mills. They are funded, as you say, by the people that are selling you what they're testing.
Well, as I've said, I'm not here to say there are no flaws in this industry.
Okay, but hang on a second. If you were buying a used car
Yes.
and you wanted to have it checked out, would you have it checked out by the mechanic that had it for sale?
Definitely not. But something to keep in mind is that, this isn't just one study. They have 17 randomized controlled trials.
I've got them all here, and
so
they're all funded by the same people, the same mechanic.
They are published on the NIH. Like I said, that doesn't mean they're inherently without flaw. I believe it's possible in the future you could come out with research that shows that maybe there is a problem with something, but that could happen with any food item that's common to you. Ultimately, reducing obesity, reducing your calorie intake is so important. And that's what diet soda has allowed me to do personally and allows some other people to do as well.
I think that's great for you personally. The core criminal situation happening is that the pharma and health industry is not standing up against our consumption of these frankenfoods. It's because every single institution of healthcare makes money.
You call them what foods?
Ultra-processed food, frankenfoods.
What are frankenfoods?
Frankenfoods are like Frankenstein's lab. You're just putting a bunch of ingredients together. There's a reason there's all those ingredients on the label that you don't understand. These are thousands of chemicals, even in Diet Coke, that the food industry's lobbied for, many of which are banned in every other country. The criminal aspect here, Dr. Phil, is that the healthcare industry should be speaking out, but they're also taking money from the food industry and complicit in this because they make money when we get sick.